Hi everyone, just a little bit of an update on the windfoiling. I've had a couple of people comment on some of my older videos and said, you know, am I still doing it? The answer is yes. I don't do so much of it anymore, and I don't really make that many videos on it because I'm mainly concentrating on winging. But I am still windfoiling, and I'm still on my trusty Hover 142. It's 7 years old. It's had a lot of use. As you can see, I've basically put some extra padding on here for the deck plate in the area here, because I did actually start using it for wingfoiling, and I learned to wingfoil on it, and it was actually really good for it. So I was still windfoiling it, still winging it, and yeah, it's a great board. It really has done the job. So unfortunately, when I first got it, the gel coat all started cracking off, and that was an issue with the paint from Nash. And if I'd known that other people were having issues, I probably would have complained and probably got it done, but you know what, it was going to end up pretty battered anyway. But yeah, it's still watertight, still does what it's doing. Originally I was on slingshot foils, and they worked really well with it. But the problem was, as I got better, I started to put a lot more force through. I started to bend them, so I started to have a few issues with the slingshot stuff. So I changed over to Gong, and then found that Gong didn't really work with the board. It was too far back. And I didn't really want to keep the slingshot stuff, and I didn't really want to sort of keep the Gong stuff, so I wanted to go for one set of stuff that would work. And I actually found that the Armstrong gear sort of worked. It sort of worked, and it meant that I could have one set of gear that I could wing with and I could windfoil with. And yeah, it was okay, but it wasn't perfect, but it was okay. And then for some other strange reasons, I sort of bought another set of Gong kit, and I started to use my Gong stuff for winging, and I kept the Armstrong stuff sort of a bit of both, and then I just sort of ended up doing more and more wing foiling, which was sort of where my passion sort of gone to. But I still do like wind foiling. I do like the speed of it, and I do like that locked in feeling. So basically I sort of started to use the Armstrong stuff a lot more, but the problem with the Armstrong is that because of the design of the foils, is that the center of lift on them is quite sort of in a different place. So in order for it to work with the windfoil, you have to have it as far forward on the box as you can possibly go. And even when it's fully forward on the box, I found that I was standing about here, and everything was a long way back. Even the mast was all the way back, and it just meant that I was sort of leaning back and sinking the towel, which wasn't really good for early planing, which is sort of why we tried to wingfoil. But you know, I was able to do it, and then I figured out that if I was to put some shims in the towel, I could do that, and that would work. But then, unfortunately, it would just slow me down. I wasn't going very fast, but it was okay. It was comfortable. And then obviously I started doing a lot more winging, and occasionally would go out and do this, but it was mainly just sort of to go out with my friends when they were windfoiling. But then recently, well, actually not recently, a couple of years ago, Gong actually came up with a bit of a revelation, which was brilliant. And I'm just going to sort of explain how it worked and what it did, and actually yeah, really simple fix, and it's just made a massive difference. And I've really enjoyed windfoiling again, going really quick and a lot more stable, a lot more, you know, just been good fun. So I'm just going to go through this little sort of enhancement that they've come up with, and the reason why it's needed. Right, so you can see here, this is basically an Armstrong setup, and where the mast would go in the fin box is right here, and it's gone as far forward as it possibly can, which actually puts the foil about here, which is, you know, forward of the foot straps. But because you've got your mast with your sail, everything else like that, you do need to put a lot more lift in to counteract that. The other issue is this is a 70 centimeter fuselage on this one, and it's just not long enough. So I found that in order for me to use this, I had to put the foot straps much further back, which meant that I was standing on the tail of the board a lot more, which meant that I was sinking the tail. I was finding it a lot harder to get going. Because everything was further back, I had to bring the mast all the way back, and that meant that everything was all very close together, and I was very unstable. Because the fuselage is very short, I was having to sort of put an awful lot of back foot pressure just to hold the nose up, and back foot pressure is putting a lot of pressure on the stabilizer, which is causing drag, and that was just keeping me slow. It was relatively stable, it was okay, but it was okay to get out, but I wasn't really going fast and I wasn't in super control, and there was nothing else I could do about it because I needed to get the mast as far forward as possible in order to get the foil as far forward as possible, and it just wasn't far as forward as it needed to be. So that was the issue there. So now we come to the gong setup, and basically with the mast as far forward as it'll go, you can see that basically the foil is in about the same position. The problem is the fuselage is even shorter, so you just don't have that control in pitch, and because everything is all the way back, and it was just becoming a problem. So there was no way of moving it any further forward, and it was a real shame because it just meant that I had to keep 2 sets of kit, which I didn't really want to do, and it just made it, you know, I didn't want to put it in the car because I didn't want to take a board, 2 boards, and then 2 sets of kit and that kind of thing. So that was the issue. But Gong came up with a bit of an ingenious and very, very simple, which was a way of extending the fuselage that way and the fuselage that way to move everything forward and to extend everything. I'll just show you. So they came up with these extenders. So they came up with one that would extend the front fuselage and one that would extend the rear fuselage, which is brilliant. It's very, very simple, and actually in the great scheme of things not that expensive. So just to have these in here, suddenly it means that you can actually make this work. So I'll just set it up and show you how much of a difference. I'll leave the mast in the same position so you can see just how much of a difference it makes. So you can see there the comparison between the Gong, and even though the Armstrong fuselage was feeling too short, even shorter was the Gong fuselage. So in order to make that now work, we've got these extensions. So you can see now that with that mast in the same position, look how far forward that foil has now gone, and look how far back the tail is. So it's now actually made that into a 95 centimeter fuselage, which is going to make things a lot more stable. It also means that I can move that foil as far forward as I want to. In fact, when I'm using this foil with this setup, I actually have to move the mast halfway back in the foil box, and it just means I can absolutely fine tune it. And it means that I've now been able to move my foot straps back to the front, which means that I can put my mast, my actual sail mast, further forward, which is great. Also means that I'm a lot more stable in pitch, and because I'm a lot more stable, I'm now able to use a much smaller foil. This is a 1,000 centimeter foil, so I've actually hit 21 knots with this on a 5/8, and it wasn't massively windy, but it was good. But it was just really exciting to get out. So for the sake of those 2 little extensions, I've now basically been able to convert my fairly top-end wing gear into really cool wind foiling kit, and it just means that this board has now suddenly got a whole new lease of life, and I've been able to have some really, really cool runs, which have just been brilliant and really put a smile back on my face. Tend to use it more when the winds are a little bit gusty, and I'm not really that worried about going out winging, and it's just been great. It's just been great to be able to go and cruise, and I tend to go a lot further, big longer runs on this than I do on the wing. So you can see just a really simple thing, and yeah, just really easy. So you can see there, that's all it is. It's just an extension, and the rear one, they do quite a nice little carbon extension, and they do 2 sizes. This is the longer one, and it just means now that just for inserting those into your kit, you've now got something to do it. So that's basically where I am with wind foiling again. I am still doing it. I'm just not doing it quite as much as I was. It's just a case of really I don't want to give it up. It's like windsurfing. I didn't really want to give up windsurfing. Because I didn't want to give up windsurfing, that's why I carried on learning to windfoil, because it sort of felt like windsurfing. And now I've got into winging, and now I'm going a lot faster. The winging is now really quick, and it's sort of almost like windsurfing speed, so it's starting to feel a little bit like windsurfing. But it's like these drugs, once you've got them in your system, you don't want to let them go. So I am still windfoiling, and I'm still on the same kit, and it's working really well. So that's basically an update as to what's happening. So I'm using much smaller foils. In fact, I'm actually using, this is the one that I used a couple of weeks ago, and this is a 700 square centimeters. So it's absolutely tiny, and this, I would never have ever dreamed that I would ever be using something like that. So paired with a 180 tail, that is quick, and the fact, because I've got such a such a long fuselage, I'm able to use it. So yeah, so there we go. There's a little bit of an update on the wind foiling. Still doing it, but not as much. But when I do it, I'm enjoying it. And you can see there the big difference once you put the fuselage extensions on. Look how much that extends it. You get that a lot further forward, but also you can see with the mast position on the foil on the fuselage with the Gong, and the mast position on the Armstrong, you can see how much more of a gap you've got.